I would request Ms. Neelima Grover to please come up on the stage and address the audience. Hi.
So I'm going to get started. My name is Neelima Grover, and I am the CEO and the founder of a company called Q2IMPACT and Q2GLOBAL. We have been around for the last 27 years, and today I'm going to talk about a topic that's very near and dear to my heart, which is artificial intelligence and how we need to forge a path forward in the defense and security sector. Before I do that, I thought I'd share with you sort of a brief story. So I'm based in Washington, D.C., and my company is based in Washington, D.C. And I took a flight over from D.C. to Delhi yesterday. And when I checked in at the counter, the agent was very proud and said, "We have an AI tracking system for your bags." So I got a message after I checked in my bags that my bags were on the flight. And so I arrived in Delhi, and only to find that my bags were not there. So I went to the ground agent, Mr. Rajesh was there, and I was very upset. I said, "Mr. Rajesh, mere bags to aaye nahi hai. You know, the AI tracking system told me that my bag's on the flight." He said, "Madam, don't worry. I'm going to solve the problem." And so he took his walkie-talkie and he walked around the airport and he, started calling everyone, and he found my bags. So the point being that even though we had the AI system to check in to track my bags, ultimately it was the human dimension that solved the problem. And so I want to talk about AI and AI in the context of where we are in society right now and where India stands right now, because I do believe that we are at a pivotal moment at this particular point in time. Next slide, please. So I think we have a real opportunity right now and a real challenge as well. I think we're at a pivotal moment. Why? Because AI is no longer a concept out there. It is a reality. It's happening today in every aspect of life. And it's happening very quickly. When you really think about it, ChatGPT was, a year and a half old? And so already it's prevalent in many of our lives on almost a daily basis. And the speed at which change is occurring is phenomenal. So we are at a very fast, competitive, and rapidly evolving environment. And in this situation, when we talk about defense and security, technology is being launched and mainstreamed. And once this is out and we are actually implementing AI, it's going to be very difficult to put the genie back in the bottle. As we've learned the hard way, that once technology takes over and there's technological advancements such as social media, the risk of blind AI can be long-lasting and counterproductive to human development. And so I think we have to be very, very aware of that. What are we doing right now? Are we creating the right solutions, especially in the defense and the security space, where it is life and death? And I think India, in particular, has a real opportunity right now. And why? Why do I say that? Because I think India stands at a place where geopolitically, India is a very important and strategic country. India has the diversity of population and a multitude of problems that can be replicated in the world over. I think India also has a large talent base. And so I think there is a real opportunity for India to be a leader in AI in a way that the United States cannot, in a way that China cannot, frankly, because of the democratic systems that we have in place. And so as we think about defense and security, we have a real opportunity that we can capitalize on, and that's what we should be thinking about in India right now. And so with this background, I want to move to the next slide. So, we just learned in the last panel the amazing things that the Indian Defense Forces is doing and the rapid progress that's being made. So there's enormous promise and there's enormous risk as well. And I want to spend a few seconds speaking about that. Next slide, please. So we talked about the huge promise, right, of AI. You have data, and if you build AI on top of data, you have this huge computing power that you can make decisions on. And these are things like, you can predict humanitarian response. You can make decisions in the battlefield. You can forecast natural disasters. You can predict migration patterns, and so on and so forth. The computing power of AI takes months of work and really compresses that in seconds and even minutes. And so with that possibility, AI has the ability to mitigate conflict, to support security measures, and manage information and disinformation in a way that is unprecedented right now. And so you can get a complete and accurate operational picture with AI that you could never get before. So I think there's enormous opportunity and promise with AI. However, with this, there's also risk. Next slide, please. So let's talk about risk. What are the risks? So if AI is built on biased data, ultimately, you're building the computing power of AI on top of data. If that data is biased, okay, then what are you going to do? You're going to misclassify, you're going to exclude, and you're going to cause harm. And that's something we have to be very, very cognizant of, especially in the areas that we're talking about right now in defense and conflict. So I'll give you an example right now that comes to mind. Facial recognition technology is something that is used quite prevalently in the security industry, right? And if you look at, this is an example we put up there, some of the, there's an example that's quoted out there about using facial recognition technology, using mostly the images that exist right now, and sometimes those images tend to be of low quality. They tend to be mostly male images, okay? And so there's a situation where a young Kashmiri woman activist, a community activist, is arrested because her facial features look like what's emerging from the AI. She's arrested, she's detained. When she's detained, it goes on social media, it becomes viral. She loses her job. And in a situation like this, instead of AI being an enabler, it essentially creates mistrust in the security forces. It creates a situation where citizens don't feel empowered to go and participate in any civic issues because they're scared, right? So this is a very real example where the underlying data was inaccurate. The underlying data was not representative, was not good, and therefore wrong decisions were made that essentially create more problems than good. And so that's why we have to be careful about the risks. The next slide. So in the work that we have done, and I mentioned my company has worked in 96 countries over the last 27 years. One of the principles that in the security sector that we abide by is do no harm. And what do you mean by do no harm? Do no harm basically talks about anticipating and mitigating potential harm. And so in the defense and security space, we have to be very much operating with that in mind. We want to make sure that the AI solutions we are creating do not create unintended consequences and cause more harm than good. And that should be underlying everything that we do as we engage in this work. Let's move to the next slide. So when we think about what the priorities should be for India going forward, so India has a very diverse population. The fact of the matter is connectivity in India, 57% of people have internet connectivity. Okay, out of that, 33% of women have access to the internet. So you have data that is actually very heavily biased already, okay? And if you're building things on top of large language models, which are the ones that currently exist, those are mainly based on data from the internet, and those are mainly Western data. So the situation in India is very different from what is being captured in an LLM. So we have to be aware of that. So when we think about that, there are 5 sort of priorities that emerge, and these priorities are based on making sure that we do no harm, that we can take the promise of AI, and that we take the moment that we are in, the urgency, the opportunity, and the responsibility, and we move forward in a way that's intentional and reflects India's diversity, protects our people, and strengthens our institutions. Because once this ship sails, it's going to be very difficult to go back. With that, we want to create these priorities that I've laid out here. They are practical, mission-aligned, and grounded in India's current and future security needs. So the first one is inclusive AI is a national security imperative. The second one is geo-AI is an untapped strategic power. I really believe that. The third one is cybersecurity and ethical AI, something that we absolutely must focus on. The fourth is creating multilingual, small, and contextual models. And I'm going to talk about this a little bit more. And I think here India can truly be a leader. And the fifth one is something that was touched on in the last session, which is how do we take all the information that we have and really move it to a point where we can actually make it actionable. And there's some very good examples of things that we have worked on that I'd like to share with you. So let's go to the first one, which is about inclusive AI. Here the idea is, think about, a commander who's talking to his advisors, and he only listens to half of his advisors and ignores the other half. Is that going to be any good? I don't think so. Or if a chai wala is making masala chai and takes only half the ingredients and ignores the other half, okay? You're not going to have the best outcome. Similarly, if you're creating AI solutions which are not inclusive of the entire population and is representative of the diversity and the vulnerability in the populations, you are not going to come up with good solutions. And so therefore, it is very important to have inclusive AI. And here, I'll give you an example of something that I experienced and heard last year when I was at a panel in the US presenting to the National Guard Bureau that deals with a lot of responses in flood and tornado sort of situations in the US. And they were telling me about the challenges because they said they were using an AI model to target where they have to provide their humanitarian response when there's a flood situation. These models are based on data that is being collected, and it allows them to target where they need to go and provide support in an emergency situation. But they said to me, the situation is as follows. In a flooding situation, the people who need the most help typically tend to be women and children because they don't know how to swim. However, the AI model was not disaggregated, didn't show women and children, and so it showed them targeting for places that they didn't need to be going to, and not targeting the places where women and children were there. The point being that the data underlying all of this was not inclusive. It was not representative of the real problem. And so therefore, the solutions that the AI came up with was not the best solution. And therefore, the people who really needed to be helped could not be helped in a timely manner. So that is what was missing, and that's why I believe that inclusive AI is really important, and that means that we have to create language inputs, and you can well imagine in a place like Assam or Bihar, when you leave women unalerted during floods, this can lead to a situation where people will essentially die. It's not a tech failure, it's a human failure here. So we have to think about that. We have to think about when you leave out entire groups, rural communities, women, linguistic minorities, tribal populations, AI can cause harm, not prevent it. So we must train models in local languages. We must think about that as we develop AI solutions. Inclusive AI, therefore, is a national security imperative. I also think a similar argument can be applied around cross-border issues when, vulnerable populations need to be targeted. The next one is around geospatial AI. So when you take data from the sky, you can find out a lot of things, right? And so, and then you build an AI model on top of that, and you can do some amazing things. And we have done some really interesting work around the opium production in Afghanistan. We could see where the production was happening, how it was evolving, where the illicit trade patterns were going to emerge, as a result of which where there were going to be security issues, where there were going to be trafficking issues. All of this could be predicted when we did an AI on top of geospatial information. So I think it's got huge potential, and it's a resource that's largely untapped. And I think India really has a strategic opportunity here, especially when you take geospatial AI and you overlay it with other human contextual information. That's when the magic begins to happen. And AI can analyze all of those patterns in a very real way. So I think that's something to think about. The challenge, of course, is that the geospatial systems also tend to be biased. So, for example, we hear about surveillance data. A lot of times surveillance is done on very targeted areas for targeted populations. So if you take that surveillance data and you start creating decisions for the entire population without correcting for those biases, you're going to have a problem again. So that's where you have to start thinking about all of that up front. And so if you do that well, you can use geospatial AI for cross-border migration prediction, food insecurity, disaster and climate forecasting, maritime surveillance, disease outbreak mapping, and a whole bunch of other things. So I think there's huge potential. The third one is around cybersecurity. Next slide, and AI. So where is modern warfare held right now? It's in cyberspace, okay? And cyber-facilitated targeting and violence is a real thing that happens. And it's a global challenge right now. And the opportunity is to create systems to protect, predict, prevent, deter, and hold accountable cyber criminals. That's what we need to be doing. And that requires a whole of society approach. You cannot just say it's going to be training. You have to create a whole ecosystem so that you can identify deep fakes or disinformation. You can work with the communities to be able to protect those vulnerable populations and identify online content and be able to mitigate and prevent these targeted cyber attacks, which ultimately create a real threat for social and state cohesion and stability. The next one is the power of multilingual and small and contextual models. This is, I believe, a real opportunity. Why? Because if you're not able, and I think there's some work happening already in India around this, but I think a lot more needs to be done. Creating contextual local solutions which really work in that particular environment is really important. To be able to do that, you need that local data. You need the data system which can identify the slang words, the local languages, so that you can identify where the threats are emerging as a result of that. And I think there's a lot more opportunity to create these localized small language models that can really protect populations. And I'll give you an example here also of something that we worked on. So we were working in a fragile setting in South Africa a couple of years ago. And in that setting, there were lots of conflicts happening between tribes in that particular region. And women in particular were susceptible to violence. And so there was an experiment done around creating a chatbot solution to be able to provide immediate support to people who were under threat. Well, it was built on top of ChatGPT, and it was it was not a local language model. And so when the messages came in local slang, the model couldn't pick it up. The chatbot gave completely inappropriate responses, and it created completely a negative reaction because it didn't save or protect anyone. And so now an experiment is underway to create a local language model that takes into account, it's called Chatbot Suzy, you can look it up, to look at a local language model that takes all the local dialects and is going to be able to protect people in a very real way, because when that message comes through, the AI will pick it up, will be able to understand what it's saying, and then be able to provide an appropriate response. So I think there's a huge potential with this multilingual small language and contextual AI models, especially in the defense and security space, that needs to be explored in a country like India, where there are 22 official languages and so many other dialects, and many areas of conflict, whether it's in the east or the north or the west, and they don't have a one solution. They all are locally driven solutions. The last one, which I believe is a real opportunity as well, is in this whole area that you all were discussing in the previous model, which is how do you take data that currently exists, especially in the defense and security space where a lot of information is classified, and be able to use it in a way that you can make decisions. And here we have learned that creating a closed loop knowledge management system is something that's very effective. And we have done a lot of work in this area, and essentially there are many advantages to doing this. It's closed loop system. Next slide, please. So in high-risk environments, you don't want the LLM model to be hallucinating, right? You want real, actual information. There's so many documents out there, like you said. There's so much data out there. How do you create a closed-loop solution where you can connect people with information in real time, and also create a solution where the services can really share information with each other in real time, and then get access to underlying source documents? And that is where the opportunity exists right now, is to create these closed-loop secure systems that can operate in a classified environment and be able to connect people in a very real way. And of course, we have done that. And we experimented internally in our company in creating a solution such as this. Go to the next slide, please. So these are some of the advantages of a closed-loop system, which I highly encourage you to explore, India to explore. Let's go to the next slide. So this is an example of something that we have created. It's a tool called Q2 Maverick. So my company has done work in 96 countries, like I said, over the last 27 years. And so there's a lot of data that we have had, because we have looked at probably hundreds of billions of dollars worth of programs over the last 27 years. And we have data on which programs have worked and which programs have not worked, okay? Especially when we are looking at whether it's foreign assistance programs from the United States or other programs that have been implemented. All those results are available, many of them publicly available, but because my company had done work for 27 years, we created a closed-loop knowledge management system and a tool. And this tool is called Q2 Maverick, okay? That allows us to query and say, okay, I'd like to work in, I'm looking at a security situation in XYZ country. Where have there been challenges, and what has worked and what hasn't worked? Immediately you can pose this question to a tool like Maverick, and you'll get that information, and it won't be off the open internet, because these are vetted sources of information in a closed-loop system. So if you imagine doing this in the defense and security context here in India, you will be able to have a huge repository of information that can really learn on an ongoing basis. So I really highly suggest that this be explored further. Can we move to the next slide, please? And this is an example of the tool Maverick. We have a beta version of this right now that's available. Next slide, please. And so when we think about the way forward for India, I think the first thing is I'll start with where, I'll go to where we started from. AI presents a real promise, but there's also a real risk as well. There are biases. Let's know about those biases right now. Before we get off the ground, before we start doing too many things, let's think about that right now, and let's make sure that the genie is not out of the bottle and we create solutions that cause more harm than good. And if we don't address what's broken in AI today, it will decide what's wrong tomorrow. The second thing is that we have to align AI with national strategy. That's really important. And AI must make our systems faster, smarter, and more inclusive, not more chaotic. Okay? The third thing is we have to embed ethics and do no harm from the start. You can't say, let's build it, let's try it, and then we'll correct it. It doesn't work like that. You have to build it up front. And there's a lot of information out there. So how do you do that? How do you do that? You have to start testing. You have to start getting feedback loops. You need to see what the impact is. You need to bring the local communities in from the very beginning. The fourth thing is that you really have to bring in the human elephant. You have to train your people. If you don't train the defense workforce, AI systems don't run themselves. Humans must understand them, they must test them, and they must challenge them. And then finally, AI should not be designed to replace humans. AI should be designed to augment humans, not replace human intelligence. AI must be secure, inclusive, and accountable, because systems we build today and will decide who is going to be seen, who's going to be safe, and who is going to be left behind tomorrow. Thank you. I'm ready to take questions. Yes.
So we are building AI, foundational AI, to be self-adaptive in real time during inference. So our methodology is very different from what DeepSeek did. So if we can get some aspects from the data that you've collected during your work in all these different countries, I think we can make a lot of difference to serving these kinds of areas that need to be adapted in real time to help people and do tasks that are previously unseen, because the world doesn't stay static, it's completely dynamic. So is there any way that we can get some kind of data to train our models from scratch?
You're talking about access to Q2 Maverick?
Yeah.
Yeah. So yes, I mean, Q2 Maverick is in beta version right now. We are actively testing it, and we don't have the predictive capabilities yet, but we're looking to build that. So we are certainly open to, I mean, we want it to be used because there's a huge amount of information that can be mined for various purposes. And right now, I mean, that's why we created it, because we felt there was a real opportunity to do things. So happy to discuss that with you.
Thank you.
Hello?
Yeah, hello.
Yeah, my name is Rajiv. And my question is that what type of data are you going to share out of your 27 years experience? Means, is it related to the defense of different countries?
So
then what about the data security and privacy issues?
So no, so it's related to outcome data for various programs that have been implemented across the world, whether it is, and many of them are, around security and peace building and, social programs that have been implemented, and what kind of results have been generated as a result of those programs. So, for example, if you're trying to do a peace building project in, let's say, a country in Africa, for example, okay? What has happened as a result of that? Have the outcomes been more peaceful? Has there been less conflict? Which communities has it benefited? How? Okay, this huge amount of learning that's occurred. And so my company has done work in measuring impact of these programs around the world. And like I said, we've worked in 96 countries, and we have looked at, thousands, tens of thousands of projects. Imagine the results of all those projects being aggregated to provide trends and be able to provide insights and even predict what's going to happen in some particular settings. That's what we are going to be able to do.
All right, thank you.
Yeah.
Hello.
Hi,
So I
this is
think-
Manoj Agarwal. So I just wanted to ask, is there any project you have done with the Indian government also
I'm sorry, what's the question?
in India? Have you?
Is there any presence that we have in India?
Yeah.
Yes. So we have a India operation as well, and in creating this Q2 Maverick, we are collaborating. Our Indian entity is collaborating with another local partner here. So our US entity, our Indian entity, they were all working together as a team. And our typical way of operating is when we say we've operated in 96 countries, we work with local partners in those countries because we believe that the best solutions come from those local companies that understand the country context. I'm based in the US, okay? We cannot imagine that we can come here and give you the best answers. Probably local companies here have much more understanding of the local situation. So we bring international expertise with the local knowledge and the local companies on the ground to create the best solutions. That's what we do.
So is there any project you have done with the Indian contest so far?
So, like I said, the whole Q2 Maverick is being done here in India with our, we are also building an AI Center of Excellence in India. And then we have looked at a number of projects in India which have been funded by either the US government or by the World Bank and other international donors and entities to help them implement and evaluate their programs.
Okay, thank you.
Any other questions? All right, really a pleasure to meet all of you, and thank you very much for being such a great audience, and thank you, GAISA, for having me here today.